we don't know each other's stories, right? And there can be so much pain, but so much joy as well. And I think what I'd love to see more people do is to lean in, as you say, and get to know someone, even if it's just one person, and they'll feel, what that will do for that person will move mountains for that person, in helping them feel like they are valued and that they belong here.
Hey there, welcome. My name is Tim, and today on the show we have Rachael Carter. She's the operations manager of youBelong Australia. That's a charity that exists to empower refugees to thrive here in Australia, to integrate into society. She's also had an incredible role of being one of the pioneers in refugee healthcare, taking up a role as Refugee Health Nurse, the first of its kind in the state of Queensland, Australia. We talk a bit about her journey towards having such a passion for helping refugees and serving them and empowering them. It's really just such a special interview because she, for me personally, as we've launched this new charity, youBelong, probably been the single most influential person in making it the success that it is today. I'm really excited to share with you this great conversation I have. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. Well, Rachael Carter, thank you so much for coming on the Justice Matters podcast.
No problem.
Yeah, it's quite fitting, isn't it? You are the operations manager of youBelong, and you've been my right-hand person from the very beginning. In fact, we all know the tables have turned, really, essentially, and I'm here to help you continue to do a fantastic job in leading the work of youBelong. You provide such incredible passion and vibrancy to the work up there in Toowoomba, which is a small little country town, but they would like to think of themselves as
not so small.
right, as a quite a big city in the state of Queensland, Australia.
Yeah, I think it's actually like the largest regional city in Queensland.
There we go.
I don't know about the statistic.
I stand corrected. But yeah, I mean, you really have been doing an incredible job over the last couple of years. But it wasn't your first role in working with refugees. You started out as pioneering a role, basically, in the health area, which is your background. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where you got your start in really engaging with the refugee community?
Yeah, so I'm a registered nurse, and I got a position in Multicultural Development Australia, which is the settlement service that's in Toowoomba. And so usually refugee health nurses are placed in hospitals or GP practices. So this was the first one placed within a settlement agency. And so I got to journey with the refugees for some of them, the minute they got off the plane and right through to settling them, into schools and into their healthcare providers and stuff like that. So it was awesome.
Yeah, and again, like one of the first of its kind in Queensland, right? And
so two roles, one in Ipswich and one in Toowoomba. So they were that first in Queensland, which is pretty cool. It was pretty good to try and figure out exactly what that role was going to be. And
yeah. So you're a Toowoomba girl, right?
I am. Born and bred.
And what this town has got quite a history of welcoming refugees, and I think that's something that most people in Toowoomba are really, really proud of. And so, what was it like growing up for you in this town of Toowoomba, and how did this new kind of identity that Toowoomba has as being a refugee welcome zone kind of impacted you?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I even though I went to state high school, I didn't ever interact with any refugees, and so yes, Toowoomba was taking in refugees, but it was easy actually not to be involved or not to interact, and not that that's anyone's fault. It just, I think it wasn't in your face. But then all of a sudden in 2017, we received a lot more than we had, like 3 times the usual amount.
Right.
So it was, it was just a whole heap more obvious that there were refugees in our city, even though we'd been welcoming. Toowoomba's been a refugee welcome zone since 2013, but before that we'd received refugees as well. So, yeah.
And you've got, obviously, that's largely due to, people in the council, the mayor in particular.
Yep. He's very welcoming of refugees and what they can bring to the region.
Yeah, contribute. And they have. I mean, obviously Australia as a nation has been built on those that have migrated here, those that have found a new start and a place here. And we've got a rich history of multiculturalism, of welcoming those from afar. And so I think it's in our national anthem, isn't it? The second verse, from those who've come across the seas or something like that.
I don't know those words quite as well as the first verse, but yeah.
Isn't that funny though?
Yeah,
right? Most
bad,
Australians would not have a clue what the second verse of our own anthem is, or the fact that there's potentially like 4 verses, right?
Yeah. Is there 4 verses?
I think there is.
Oh, wow.
Maybe they added like all these extra ones later on, but
I feel a bit ashamed now.
You feel ashamed?
I didn't know that. 4 verses.
I don't know. Most Aussies, we didn't. I don't know about you, but we didn't get a very good education on Australian history. I don't think in school, but there we go. But so your role began in Toowoomba, pioneering a role in the nursing area of healthcare with refugees. Love to know, what got you into nursing and so I guess. Having known you for a few years now, I mean, it's obvious to me why you'd be such an incredible nurse, because you've got such a caring, compassionate, and helping heart. But yeah, what kind of took you down that journey in the first place?
I always wanted to be a nurse.
Really?
Forever. Yep. Since I was a tiny little kid, my grandma was a nurse, my mum was a nurse. Okay. So it was.
Can I just let you in?
Yeah.
My mum was a nurse. My 2 sisters are nurses. My brother married a nurse. And
there you go.
My mum was desperate for me to become a nurse.
Oh, really?
So maybe in another life,
Did you let it down?
I think I did. She was like, no, really, you should become a nurse. And I don't know, it was probably the macho man in me that said there's no way. But I know there's some incredible guy nurses out there. But you followed your family lineage of being
it was
a nurse.
a no-brainer for me. Went and did nursing. So I worked in the acute setting for a long time and had my children in that time. So then I wanted a job that was a little more family-friendly, I guess, something 9 to 5 or where I wasn't doing night duty. And this opportunity just popped up with MDA. I was sort of just scrolling through Seek and it jumped out at me straight away, working with refugees and, I guess working with a minority group and people who I really felt like I guess I could make a difference. So I went for it, but I didn't get the job.
No way.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, another lass got it, but she actually never started. It wasn't going to fit in with her family, and so they rang me up and gave me the job 8 weeks later. So I was second on the list.
Well, they certainly got the right girl at the right time. So
yeah, it was good timing for me and my family too. So and then so it was just all history from there.
Wow, and that's kind of how we met. You were still in that role. So you talked about how Toowoomba went through this phase where they kind of started receiving a lot more refugees into the community. That had a lot of refugees from the Congo, from Sudan, from what other regions? Afghanistan even?
Yeah, Afghanistan, Eritrean.
Yep.
I can't say that word right ever.
Yeah.
But
no, that sounded pretty good. Better than what I would say.
Yeah, good.
So there was a particular influx.
Yeah. So we, in mid-2017, we started seeing Iraqi and Syrian refugees, particularly that of the minority group of Yazidi people. So, and they'd suffered great atrocities in their home countries. And so there was a large amount of those that needed to seek refuge. So Toowoomba was identified as a place where that would suit their culture, I guess, because they come from an agricultural background.
Right.
And they thought regional Australia would be a good place for them to settle. So Toowoomba and Coffs Harbour and Wagga Wagga were some of the places that they chose.
Yeah.
We saw, I think, 600 in that second half of 2017 or something,
Right.
or in that first 12 months. So,
Yeah.
it was a big influx from receiving like between 100 and 200 refugees a year.
Right. Wow. And how did the community like adapt to that? I mean, that's quite a jump in numbers.
Yeah, yep. How did they adapt? It certainly was a challenge because all of a sudden we had big influxes of children in schools that didn't know English. We'd always had some, but but I think Toowoomba, took it on and rose to the occasion, and that's how where youBelong started too, was part of that,
Totally.
meeting the needs there in Toowoomba. I think we rose to the occasion, but there's always opportunity for growth there, isn't there?
Right. And Toowoomba, right, is a town that, it's known for the obviously the Festival of Flowers.
Yes.
Which is a big draw card for that place.
Yep.
People come from all over Australia to see the beautiful flowers that
They do.
September, is it?
September,
September,
beginning of spring. So when everything's out in bloom and they have a big parade, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, but it's also known. It was also known for a while for this Easter festival. Easter Fest, I think it was a Christian or a gospel music festival, and the cool thing about that is it kind of highlighted, I think, another thing about Toowoomba, which was a place where churches and faith groups really work together.
Yep.
And if you ask me, it's probably in part why I think Toowoomba's been a really big success in the welcomingness, if that's a word, of refugees, of people that there's a community groups that are really strong working together. Can you talk a bit about that and how that may have
I think Toowoomba tries really hard to have those faith-based organisations work together, and so
which is not an easy task, right?
No,
we
it's
all
not
have
easy,
our
and it's not perfect.
Opinions
but
and our ways of what we believe and things like that. But,
and the council has been really supportive of that as well, and really encouraged the churches to get involved with helping out the refugees. So there's churches doing English classes, counselling, that sort of thing. So they really do well in welcoming, and they're some of our biggest supporters too at youBelong.
Totally. I mean, in so many ways, and resources and volunteers, and in ways that it's so exciting to be able to work with people from all backgrounds and various churches. So I want to take you back to that time where we first met. I just moved back with my family from living in northern Iraq. We were helping and serving with an NGO over there that was working with, in particular, Yazidi families, those that have fled from ISIS, and we were providing, semi-permanent housing. We'd built, what we'd call micro-refugee camps or villages. We'd pioneered providing trauma care for them, and were involved in education and a lot of different things. We'd come back. I was pretty despondent at the time because I really wanted to still be there. My wife was pregnant with our fourth child, but I remember finding out that Yazidi families were being resettled in Australia. And in particular in this town, Toowoomba, it was a 3-hour drive for me, and I reached out. I'd actually gone up to Toowoomba to meet, I think, with the Catholic leader there at the time. He was really instrumental in trying to push for Toowoomba being a welcome zone for refugees. I met with him for like 10 minutes, and he told me to go down to Multicultural Australia. I did this trip. I didn't get to meet you. I called a bunch of people and didn't really get very far, but I'd put it on Facebook, I think. And then I get this message from this sweet old lady.
Yep.
You know her,
Barbara.
Barbara Bullitt.
She's the sweetest.
And so she goes, oh, I visit families all the time. You
Yep.
should come with me. And so sure enough, I think the next week I jumped in my car and drove back up to Toowoomba and went to this lovely family that had just arrived, had a couple little children. I think she was pregnant at the time. And we sat in their home and sure enough, Rachael.
Yeah. Barb rang me too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of the beginning.
Yeah, that was definitely the beginning. So I was visiting families outside of work time, and because that's what they cried out
That's
for.
what you do.
They just wanted you to come and have a meal with them, to sit down with them and have a chat. So Barb.
So you
Barb's
weren't on
like
the job
grandma.
when we met. Part of me felt like you were actually on
no,
the
I wasn't
job.
on the job. I was just hanging out. So that was the beginning, and then we hung out for a few Fridays after that, didn't we? For a fair while.
Yeah, and that was it, right? We just came up. I would bring some friends, and we just sit and we just listen.
Yeah,
right? We just
exactly.
talk to some families, and of course they do what they do well and bring out amazing food and I think I was part of me was just coming just so that I could taste and try and hopefully keep my very limited Kurdish that I'd picked up along the way and just be amongst this just wonderful families. And you could feel the pain, right?
Oh yeah. Like it's always warm and welcoming when you visit,
Right.
but you know that you can see and feel the underlying pain.
I know, and gosh, they're brave, aren't they?
Oh,
it
yeah.
makes you think when you're sitting with them. If only we really knew, and we would try to hear some of their stories, but if only we really knew.
Yeah, I think they protect us a lot with what they actually tell us.
Have gone through.
Yeah.
And are still going through, right? I mean, a lot of them have left their families behind.
Yeah.
They got a visa, but they've got brothers and sisters or parents.
Wives.
Still,
Iraq.
waiting for a visa to hopefully come and be rejoined as families. And so, and we still hear in the news a lot of fighting still going on in many of the regions they're from, in particular the Rojava area of Syria, and so to be here and to still have to deal with, as my family, did they survive that?
Yep.
That last bomb blast that happened in that region. I mean, I don't think we could ever truly
Understand it.
So we met and we started, obviously it's talking about, I don't even know how it began. I mean, there's like this kind of merging of all these meetings, but it was like, well, we can do something about this, can't we?
For sure.
And
that's where our first picnic sprung from, wasn't it?
It did, right?
We thought that was one of our first steps, get some people together and get some locals together and provide a space for them to hang out.
Isn't that crazy how it all began just by, let's just replicate a picnic.
That's right, yeah.
That they would have in the springtime, as in particular, and how we would kind of celebrate as well. I think we had a bunch of friends from the Sunshine Coast that came up and really, were the first people to really kind of push for this idea of, let's get some school kids. I think at a school on the Sunshine Coast, they came up and ran some games and it was just a lot of fun, really, wasn't it?
It was a lot of fun, some dancing and...
Yeah, good
Aussie
old bush
dancing but then some Kurdish dancing.
Right.
Yeah. We're a little bit unco, aren't we?
Uncoordinated to say the least, and I think maybe a little like, how do we hold another man's pinky and jump up and down
and get those shoulders
they
going?
Got
How
some
do
fancy
they do that?
shoulder and foot moves, don't they?
They do.
Oh my gosh!
But they can't do the bush dance either, so it sort of comes out even.
Totally. Yeah. Probably because they have too much rhythm for a bush dance. They're like, why am I just doing this like step forward, back? I mean, it's so kind of, I don't know, regimental, isn't it? In a way.
It is a bit.
But oh well. So much fun though, right? And that was the kind of the fun. It's like the the new experience, the awkwardness of trying something new, kind of getting a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I loved those first few picnics that we ran, and were a tremendous success. And I think kind of got the ball rolling as we started. Well, what else can we do? How else can we really launch in and make an even bigger difference in this community that was now, as by this point, I think by like 2018, how many were kind of coming to Toowoomba?
So since mid-2017, we've had about 2,000 through multicultural Australia. But then there's been families move up from Wagga Wagga and Coffs Harbour to join their families.
Right. So Toowoomba's kind of like
goodness knows.
a popular spot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's the best.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we won't tell anyone that, though.
Totally.
Yeah,
No.
but they want to be near. That's their whole culture, right? Being near their family. And there's a lot of families, so.
Yeah. So youBelong has been established for a few years now. So what would you say is why does it exist?
Why?
Yeah. What's the why behind youBelong Australia?
Yeah. So I guess the why is to see the refugees thriving in Australia, that they find belonging here, they find purpose here. And youBelong wants to help them along that journey because they can't do that themselves when they don't have the language and, don't know the systems and stuff like that. So, yeah, and I'd say we exist to, promote that social cohesion between the two cultures, not just Yazidi cultures, but any cultures, right?
Right,
Of
exactly.
any refugees coming into Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have so much to learn from them.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We have so much to listen to. Their stories are so precious and so valuable and can truly inform us and help us grow. And when I say us, I don't even mean to create an us and them. It's a we-ness, isn't it? It's we are so different and come from so many different. We are complicated people. We come from so many different upbringings and backgrounds, and I think to celebrate that and to to kind of emphasize that is, would you say a real core part of
I think
of why we do what we do?
Yeah, there's culture just brings so many differences, doesn't it? And I've found it so frustrating to work on the refugees' time frame, right? But it's
right.
It's definitely taught me to take a step back and relax a little, and
sure,
take my time and sit down and have that cup of tea and that chat, rather than I can be pretty task focused. So sometimes I've had to just let that go and just sit down and talk and have another chai.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, when it comes to the values of youBelong, we started out, I think, with a whole list of L's. I think we were trying to be fancy. Yes. So it was listening, learning, genuinely loving without an agenda, and it kind of, I feel like it really has to be said, without an agenda. Like, there's no end goal to me coming and spending time with you and listening to you, learning from you. I want you to feel that sense of you're important. Yeah. You're loved. You're accepted. You belong, right? Yeah. So I think that's definitely a core part of why.
Yeah, for sure.
Of why we exist. I remember even trying to come up with this name. I remember just sitting in my office and I had this whiteboard and I just wrote down all the different words of what I would want, this new charity that I felt so burdened to begin to help these refugee families to integrate, to become a part of society here. And I couldn't get away from this word of belongingness. Right. Belongingness. But I didn't want it to just be, I wanted it to be a statement that told them right to the core of who they are, a truth about themselves, is that you belong. And so when people heard it, it was like, who doesn't want to hear that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
When they're feeling they're on a foreign land, there's nothing familiar about where they're living. There's so many things going on. Who doesn't want to hear the fact that, wow, I belong here.
Yeah.
This is
valued.
my home. You know, I'm not an outsider in this community.
Yeah.
I'm valued. I'm a part of this community. And so really for me, you know, that's kind of the birth of even the name, right?
Yeah.
youBelong Australia.
It's a good name. Good work.
Yeah, well,
It's amazing.
I say so myself. But yeah, so the why. What about, how do we do that? What are some of the ways that we really go about actually focusing on that? Because there are a lot of incredible other organisations.
Yeah.
There's the government agencies, and there's Multicultural Australia.
Yeah.
There's
trams. Yep.
There's so many different, you know, agencies that have very, very specified roles.
Yeah.
And we don't need to be kind of stepping on their toes or,
That's right.
or riding in their lane. We kind of have a focus of how we do what we do. And so what's kind of our kind of niche? What's our focus, and how do we go about doing that?
I guess we have the opportunity to just sit and listen, and that's a big focus. Like, you know, we provide English class, but the focus around that is that you're making a relationship with a local. So we have as many locals along as we do the refugees, so that they can break off and actually get to know each other, actually get to make a connection, and hopefully a relationship, you know.
Isn't that what they're called? Friendship. It's called, even the name is...
well, I think the name's an evolving thing. We sort of call it conversation friendship classes. So yeah. But, you know, so many of those locals are now going into those refugees' homes and having, you know, meals with them or tea with them, and just as a result of hanging out together in the English class. So they felt confident enough and comfortable enough to then take it outside of the English class. And I think that's a big thing for us locals sometimes, is to feel, you know, it does take a bravery to take that step to go in somewhere where you don't necessarily speak the language, or you might have a little bit, and sometimes that ends up in awkward silences and, you know, mistaken messages portrayed and all sorts of things. So, yeah, I think
totally. I mean, it can be so awkward at times. Like, how can we talk about anything else? I feel like you're at this crossroads, but goodness me, like you said, it's just being there, right?
Yeah. Oh, they
feel it. They know it.
Yep, that you could take the time out of your day.
That you'd actually come.
Yeah, and want to be with them, and
So it's this emphasis on relationship. It's this emphasis on helping them to socially integrate.
Yeah,
because you know, there's some incredible initiatives by the government and by agencies to help them, you know, learn the ropes, how to, you know, navigate Centrelink, which is kind of like the welfare support system that helps them when they first get here, or navigating school, or navigating, they give them English classes at like a community college or a TAFE, what they call it here. And so, but like, sometimes it's really difficult for them to go into those institutional places or to learn. Like, what they really need is, if there's a friend, if there's someone that will just sit with them and be in relationship, they'll learn the language better, right?
Absolutely.
They can feel connected with somebody, a family or someone that will come visit them. And so that's kind of, I guess, where we're trying to like focus on that. Like, how can we socially help them connect? Because if they can connect socially, they're going to build their networks and might even find it easy to get a job because they know somebody in the community.
And then it avoids that, you know, this culture and that culture. Like, I mean, I really hope that they can keep their culture, of course. Yeah. But if they can integrate, you know, and be able to socialise with Australians, that would be, it makes for a better city, right? Yeah. Oh. If we're all working together and not divided by culture and race and that sort of thing.
100%. One of the things I've loved about living overseas and moving into other cultures is learning their culture and
it's good fun.
Learning their food and their way of doing things. But I can assure you, when we were at home in my house in northern Iraq, we certainly made sure we kind of made our
Yeah.
nice chicken and pasta dishes, and there was only so much biryani and kufta and all that local cuisine we could eat, but that's the beauty of it, right? It's just celebrating each other, laughing at how crazy different we are. I'm married an American, and so we're forever kind of bagging each other's cultures and kind of trying to up one each other.
Yeah.
But that's part of the whole, the whole experience, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very interesting. There's some things you can love and some things you can hate, and just trying to find the middle ground where you can both.
That's okay, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I used to always tell my wife Sarah, I used to say, she'd always make fun of me. She'd say, "It's so weird that you do this." I'm like, weird? It's like, maybe it's just different, I would tell her. But, I'd catch myself saying the same thing to her about some other silly issue, I'd say, "Why? It's so silly that you do that." She's like, "Silly?" Anyways.
Just different. That's right.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about, I think, Australia it is a land of truly multicultural integration. It's done a great job, and we have challenging times right now. There's a lot going on around the world, and there's a lot of people that need refuge and help. And in the past, we've been that place of welcoming, and hopefully we can continue to be that.
I hope so. It depends on the borders, doesn't it? Whether they'll open up and
when
they'll open up, and
I know. Can you think about all those families that were like lined up to get on the next flight out to Australia, and
their visas have a expiry date, right? So they have to go
reapply again. And gosh, if only we knew the process that people went through to get a humanitarian visa, the years and years they wait in a refugee camp, and many times just living in a tent. Having lost everything, family members. I mean, it's just too hard to kind of comprehend, really.
Yeah, it is.
What have been some of the challenges? Can you think of any specific challenges that there are in maybe even just starting a charity, and getting it off the road, or just the challenges of just the role itself?
I think starting a charity is probably really hard, right? But then you add this language barrier that you're you're starting a charity with where you're working with people who speak a different language. That's tricky, and who have different their time and when their yes means yes, no means no, like different cultural, I don't know what you call it, but values. Thank you. That's the word I want.
Whatever you want to call it.
Just working with those barriers. There's definitely barriers with other people and other organisations, I guess, and like Toowoomba does work really well together, but I guess there's other barriers where we've had problems where people might think you're stepping on their toes, and
or they're just curious, what's your agenda? Maybe they're a bit suspicious, and you're like,
actually, we're just, trying to serve the same people. So
yeah.
And then I guess there's,
but that's the reality. Like, isn't that that's like, that you're gonna get that, right? You're gonna get misunderstood.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially in working in these issues, injustices. People think, well, why are you doing this when you should be helping these people? And so how have you navigated those misunderstandings? How have you kind of kept you've done so well leading youBelong. A lot of networking?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of networking, and, just having conversations like this with people and talking about what you're doing, and even trying to, be involved, not necessarily in someone else's project, but just in working together. What can you do together?
How can we help, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's one thing I love about you, Rach. Every time I come up to see you, it seems like you really are the mayor of Toowoomba. Like, everybody. You're a socialite it truly is incredible to see you work your magic. When I come up there, I'm like, okay, I'd like to meet this person, and or I'd like to hang out with this family, or learn to get to know this organisation, and lo and behold, I get up there and my day is packed because you've been able to set up all these incredible meetings with people, and you do that whilst being a mother of three.
Yeah. Yep.
Working still. You're still working?
I am still working. Yeah, but I don't know. We'll
You don't
see.
call it work so much because
Yeah,
it's nursing, right?
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't feel like work a lot of the time. I love what I do, so. But
there's only so many hours in the day, right?
That's right. And I'm learning that, good things can be the enemy of great things, right? So you can't do too many good things if it's taking away from your work of
I think I
the
need to hear
awesome
that.
things.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll see where that turns
So
out.
how you do it all it blows my mind.
Oh,
and I feel like I have to tell you most of the time, all right, Rach, how are you doing? You're not
in a corner
taking off too much than you can handle, but you're such an inspiration in that way. There's always, you find it so hard to say no in helping people because you've such a huge heart. You've got the biggest heart, and I'm so grateful that you're leading the charge for youBelong, and really raising up so many more volunteers. There's a fair few coming through the ranks that are joining on.
Yep, we've got some great volunteers. They do an amazing job. And they've grown so much too. There's one lady in particular who I think of, and she would help behind the scenes at picnics. She would be in there cutting up the food and whatnot, but actually put her out, to talk to the refugees was just not her cup of tea.
Sure.
But she goes now into a refugee's home with her husband every single week, and she is just loving it. So that was a really big step for her, to go from helping in the background to then actually interacting with this person who has very limited English. And, she's really lapping it up. So I think that's amazing how much she's grown in that area, and that now she's got the courage to go and do that with someone by her side, her husband. So it's a team effort, which is good.
Oh, mate. It's incredible. She's one of so many. We have, obviously, we are indebted to the many.
Absolutely.
The refugee community itself that step up and volunteer and serve.
And they're always the first to volunteer. They're there, and they'll do, or any job. So they'll drive, or they'll cut up, or they'll be up there dancing and interpreting
music.
And So,
what other ways does youBelong kind of try and fulfill its role? Are there initiatives that they've got going?
Yeah, so we do English classes, I mentioned before, and our picnics, our welcome picnics. So they're really to serve the local community as well, right, and provide a safe space for them to be able to connect. But then we do the GROW rehabilitation program as well. Right. So for people who've suffered through torture or tragedy, circumstances.
Which is pretty much most refugees. They've pretty much either lost all their home or friends or family, or loved ones.
Just a big thing in their life, right? Like moving to Australia is, like, without all that, moving to Australia is big enough, right? That's
totally,
that's something you could have a little bit of support with. So. So we do that.
So they're groups, right?
Yeah, groups.
It's a group session. It's
women and men are in separate groups because that seems to work well for their culture, and they go through a 8-week course, and it teaches about gratefulness and forgiveness and hope and courage and that sort of thing. They're just I would think it's like a wellbeing workshop. Just reminding your mind about the things that are important. As you grow through those experiences, rather than just going back to normal or even, declining in your general well-being.
Totally. I mean, it is remarkable how resilient these those that have found their way to Australia, these incredible families, individuals are. To just have made it this far is a testimony to their incredible resiliency, and so to be able to then help them grow and thrive as they kind of make Australia their home in this way, and do it together in a group. I think that's the fun part too as well. It's not like you're trying to give anyone a stigma of that they've got mental health issues and you need to kind of like get, intense counselling. Now, there are those people that really do need specific care and acute care, and there's resources in the community for that.
Yeah.
And hopefully these programs like GROW can be a place where it can, like you said, prevent people from declining. It can actually get them on a trajectory where they're growing through their trauma, they're growing through their tragedy, and that's possible. So that's kind of like the goal of that course, which is a pretty exciting little program that we got going there.
Had to stop because of COVID for a term or so, but we're looking forward to starting up again in a few weeks.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
That's right. Even the welcome picnics and things like that.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been impressed at how active you've still remained over the kind of the lockdown period with the coronavirus. Just the family house to house visits that you maintain, and it's kind of almost breathed fresh life into what those programs have been about, and even the English classes. It's just been really exciting to see how. Yeah. It's opened new doors of engagement and with these families.
And really
well done.
Much more intimate engagement too, which is
exactly right.
Really nice. Yeah.
The one-on-one as opposed to big group classes has been.
Yeah. People have sort of been forced to make a relationship, which is nice.
Yeah. So let's get a little bit. So how have you grown personally over these last couple of years? I mean, it's a journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I wasn't anti-refugees or anything before I started working with them, but I would say I was pretty ignorant towards, their journeys and, their like what they receive when they get here. And I just didn't, I was neither here nor there about it. So I've learnt a lot about how they come to Australia, about their settlement journey here. So that's been a big growing experience. It's made me think about my preconceived ideas about a lot of things, not just refugees, but it's actually sort of opened my eyes to a lot of different social matters in the world. Yeah. So I've definitely grown in that area. You make me come and do podcasts and stuff, which is not my thing.
You're a hot, sought-after speaker.
Oh yeah, that's it.
At events and you've been on radio shows. Don't just blame me for all that.
Yeah, it's not just Tim's fault. Yeah,
but you're learning to really you obviously model it and lead the youBelong team well. But I think you do have a voice that people need to hear.
Had to learn how to let that voice out, really. It's not particularly my natural thing, but how else have I grown? I think we touched on before how too many good things can be the enemy of a great thing, but it's been a big journey for me to really balance my life and know when to say no. And I think I've learnt part of that from refugees, just being with them and seeing how they live their life and, what takes priority for them, and family and relationships take priority.
100% do.
And that's been a big lesson for me. So, it's been a big journey.
Right. It's hard because, being involved in a charity and there's always limited resources. There's always limited money.
Yeah.
The ability to do what we do really has been with those limitations in place is a huge challenge.
Yeah, it is.
But you always want to do more.
Yes, and we could do more.
We could do more.
Space and
we don't even have obviously our own space up there, and there's so many ways. Yeah, we would want to do more. One of the things I've loved though is it's never stopped you from getting creative and finding ways to do more with what we have. I've obviously, there's probably many times when I'll be like, "Oh, Rach, don't worry, it'll get there. When it gets there, we'll grow when the time's right." Yeah. And I'm pretty much telling myself that because I'm like feeling the weight.
Go.
Well, you want to go, but you're feeling the weight of like, is this plane going to take off?
Yeah.
Are we just going to get to the edge of the cliff and it's just going to be like crash and burn?
Yeah.
And your mind can do, crazy tricks on you with
sure
that,
can.
right? Like,
Yep.
or
even are we doing the right thing? Are we making a difference? And we definitely are.
You get some opposition and you feel like,
yeah.
What do we do?
It's hard to deal with that in your own head, and I think it's our own head most of the time. That's
100%. It is our own head, because I think you're proving it. You're proving that we can provide a place where people from all backgrounds can come and be a part of making a difference in these families' lives. And when we think about making a difference, like you said, you in the process of helping, of launch, of getting uncomfortable, how much is your life impacted yourself? How much do you actually grow in the process and change and become aware? Oh my gosh, this is how I was thinking about this, how things have changed now that I've had the opportunity to get up close and personal, hear some stories.
Or even not how much you didn't think, like what we didn't know. Or for me personally, I can't believe I didn't know some of the things and some of the things we should be fighting for. And that there's so many people in our community who need someone to come alongside them and support them and love them like we're doing.
Right.
So,
This is a backyard thing.
Yeah.
This isn't like we're not trying to solve world hunger in Africa. This is something that is our neighbours.
Yeah.
These are people right here, right now, that we can make an incredible. We can love them well. We can make an incredible difference in their lives, and I think that's definitely a good reminder, right?
Yeah, that's right. And
we don't have to go far.
That's right. And they're here in Australia. They're safe, but they're still so vulnerable in so many different areas, and can lead to isolation and all sorts of things. So if we can be making a difference, that's a big deal.
And are there any particular experiences that have helped you? I think particular of one recent trip you took last year.
I went to Iraq.
Yeah, that's pretty brave of you.
Yeah, we went to the Kurdistan region, so I don't think I could actually go into Iraq.
Sure,
the rest
needed
of
another visa for that. Yeah,
so, but that was okay because that's just when something was happening in Iraq, right? About they were taking their phones off them at that time and they were taking the internet off them. There were riots and all sorts of things happening. So
especially in the southern part. Of Iraq. Yeah, they were trying to get rid of the president at the time or the prime minister at the time. Yeah.
Something. And we were safe in the Kurdistan region,
not
which was
unusual.
good.
Something hugely volatile was happening in the region, but
Yeah.
So you were there?
Yeah, so learnt a lot about the culture just by being in it. But I think it made me realise too how much coming back I just didn't know. We need to learn more. We need to understand the culture, right, before we can help, or is that the right word, before we can support. And I got to just experience the refugee camps, and I guess that gives you a little bit of an idea of the pain that and why people are suffering from survivor's guilt when they're here safe in Australia but their families are still back in Iraq. I think that, it just opens your eyes to that and makes you realise what they're actually going through and what they've been through, the ones that are here in Australia. Just to have a little bit of understanding, and I mean just a tiny bit of understanding of what they've been through and what they've had to overcome to get here. So it was an eye-opening trip. Got to experience Grow in the refugee camps as well.
It being run there.
Program, so that was pretty awesome. And I think it was awesome to see it, the program working really well over there, because I guess we've had some barriers in here getting it going here in Australia for the first time ever, mind you. But it was. I guess it was just reinforcing the need and how great a program it really is. Yeah.
And Iraq is obviously your most recent trip.
Yeah.
But you took another. I didn't know this. You I found out that you went to India.
Yeah. Yep.
And had an interesting experience there while you were there, right?
You know, the crazy trains with a gazillion people on them, and we were taking a very long
yes.
trip, right? And we had to go to the toilet. I think all of us girls, we really didn't want to go to the toilet on the train, but we had to in the end.
Why not?
Yeah, well, why not? Because you get locked in those toilets.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I think I don't know. It felt like an hour, but I'm sure it was.
You got locked in a toilet, a rickety old train in the middle of India.
You know where you see the train lines through the toilet, right? Yeah, because that's normal. Yeah, so I banged on that door a lot, and I don't think anybody heard me.
That's so bizarre because there's so many people on those trains, but they were probably, there's crazy things are happening on those trains, so you never know. They probably thought.
And I was speaking English, maybe. Who knows what they were thinking, right?
Oh my gosh! Maybe it was a big practical joke on you. They were all just laughing out. No,
maybe. I don't know. It's a conspiracy. But it was really easy getting out in the end. It was just one of those. It was just the way I was holding my tongue.
You got yourself out?
I got myself out. So that whole entire time, I was like freaking out, and I got myself out just by wiggling. I don't even remember how. But
you're crazy.
Yeah, it was scary.
When was that? When was that trip?
1998.
Okay.
Yeah, a long time ago. I was in school and I went on a trip with Teen Missions International.
Okay.
So we went to a leprosy mission hospital and
So obviously you have, this has been a real part of who you are as a person, wanting to serve.
And I've always been curious about, other cultures and other people, I guess. Always go for the person in the room who hasn't got a friend. Yeah, I don't know whether that's my personality or, but it's just always the way I've been.
Yeah. It's so that kind of explains why you came out as an Enneagram 2, right?
Yeah.
And for people that might be listening, and the Enneagram is like a personality typing tool. It's very well known in the States, but in Australia, anytime I've brought it up with people, they think I'm into some weird personality thing, and it kind of freaks them out. But the Enneagram 2 is a helper.
Yes, absolutely.
A giver.
Yeah.
Very socially and relationally focused. In fact, it's probably one of the most of the personality types, if that's what you want to call it. Yeah. And it certainly reflects in the way you do definitely make those that probably are on the out really feel like they're valued, important. It's been incredibly wonderful having you share your heart on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's been, I think your voice truly is important. I think I'm so grateful for the way you've dedicated and lead the YouBelong team. What is the one thing you would want those listening, maybe even Australians particularly, as it relates to, refugees, migrants, those that are trying to find home here in Australia, asylum seekers, it could be, culturally and linguistically diverse people.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the one thing you would want to share?
What would I want to share?
Yeah.
We don't know each other's stories, right? And there can be so much pain, but so much joy as well. And I think what I'd love to see more people do is to lean in, as you say, and get to know someone, even if it's just one person, and they'll feel, what that will do for that person will move mountains for that person, in helping them feel like they are valued and that they belong here. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, to just take a small step and say hi and see where it goes.
Well, it's doable. I love that. It's something that we can all do. And you've seen time and time again people take that step, getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got story after story of how that's made a difference. You're making a great difference, Rachael. You're inspiring so many people to do that. I've got one last question for you, which I ask all my guests, which is really kind of the heart behind, this podcast show. And it's, why does justice matter to you?
So, yeah, I don't think anyone deserves to journey alone through any tragedy, but joys as well. So that's why it's important for me, because I just don't want to see anyone thinking that they have to journey it alone or actually journeying it alone. So, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing for me. And of course the divide, then, like what divides us, I think those, culture, race, religion, they shouldn't be divisions. They, everyone, we're all human beings, right? And we all deserve to be here. We all deserve a chance at life and a chance to flourish at life. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're in this together. Thank you so much, Rachael. You're the best.
No worries. You're the best, Tim.
It was so much fun just catching up. You made the trip all the way from Toowoomba.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you had a bit
worthwhile, right?
Family vacation, but I was so glad that we can catch up in person. We don't get to see each other nearly as often as we'd like to. But yeah, thanks for coming on in. Great.
No worries. Thanks, Tim.
You got it.